just, first of all, introduce yourselves? Tell me your names and any other kind of relevant information about yourselves.
I'll let Catherine do that.
Well, I'm Catherine Butcher, and I'm part of an organisation called Peanut, and we do participatory research and training. So the reason we came along today really was to get an understanding of how citizens are going to be able to participate in this process.
Okay, so what were you expecting today?
I'm not quite sure what we're expecting.
I know what I was expecting.
Okay.
I was expecting one of the same old type of things where there's a government initiative to get people's voices recorded so that they can inform decisions and so on and so forth. There's quite a lot of these things seem to exist. And I was also expecting that we wouldn't know anything about it, which we didn't. So we came along to find out. And on one level it seems to be that some sort of strange, nebulous, vague thing that exists without us really knowing about it. And on another level, as we've just experienced later on this morning, it's actually something that we do anyway, and it's about hearing people's voices face to face, and it's how that mechanism takes place, how those voices, I don't want to use the word conversations because it's happened about 25,000 times this morning, but it's how those voices get heard in some constructive way, and a way that people actually take responsibility for being involved in that process of informing the decision or taking part in the decisions that are made further up the chain in the National Health Service. I'm kind of assuming that.
So with that in mind, are you getting an impression of how your organisation could work within this or as part of this? Or
we understand this part because that's what we do.
Yeah.
Whether that's actually going to take place or not, we don't know. If people wanted to ask us how that type of thing works and how it can work, how local knowledge can be accumulated and people can take part in decision making, then we can certainly help with that. As citizens, if people want to ask us questions, then I can understand that as well, and I can certainly participate as a citizen. But as an organisation, the only way that we feel we can take part is as in some sort of advisory capacity, or on a practical level. We do this every day. We have conversations with local people, asking them to take part in decision-making processes.
So, you talked about it being nebulous. Is there anything that would make it less nebulous for you?
Something that would make it more obvious.
I think there was an assumption. I think one of the speakers said earlier that they didn't want to bombard us with information, but actually I think some information would have been more helpful, because we've come in really with a real lack of understanding of why this event is happening and what you're hoping to get out of it. So a little bit more information I think would have been useful. I think it was an assumption too far that we couldn't cope with some additional information. Because I think we're having to start really from scratch to understand what it is this is about, what sort of role we might play in this process, and some of the kind of process things that haven't been quite clear. So I think a little bit more information or preparation would have been useful. I mean, I personally didn't hear about this event until yesterday, so I wouldn't have had a lot of time to digest anything. But I think we probably could have coped with a bit more, actually.
I think on a very basic level, this afternoon, later on this morning, the people that came in were asked a series of questions. If that's the type of question that we're going to be asked as part of a process, then those two things would be a nice thing to know about. What are the sort of questions we're going to be asked, and what is the process? How would that inform the decision making that takes place within the National Health Service? Something as simple as a flow diagram, I guess, that shows that process without technical, jargonistic words, something that just explains what the benefits are to us as well. Why is it needed? Is there something about large events that have happened and people are worried about liability and therefore they want us involved in order to make sure that it doesn't happen again? Or is it something more open, less specific, something more general, just about us informing the way services are delivered?
I don't think
just a why, a simple why, some simple questions and a simple outline of that process would be enough to get me interested anyway.
Yeah.
Someone make it sexy, I think, as well. I don't know how on earth you do that. Sorry.
So what about for the rest of the day? Is there anything that you'd like to throw into the equation at all in terms of how the rest of the day should go, or what are you going to take away from it?
You're probably going to edit this bit. Unfortunately, we're not actually from Sunderland, so
That's all right.
the next bit seems to be about mapping service provision or how the conversation takes place in Sunderland at the moment, and we know nothing about that, so it's possibly outside our experience.
I don't know, I don't think I'd agree with you there. I don't know whether we can contribute to the mapping part of the day. But I think on a positive note, I mean, I think the fact that you're starting to have the conversation has been worthwhile. I don't understand very much about it at this stage, but the fact that this event's happened is encouraging, I think.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
The word conversation has been picked up on a couple of times, and I wonder whether it's the word conversation is being used to avoid using other words. Unfortunately, you're in the danger of conversation becoming one of those other words if it's overused. If it's just about a bit of having a chat with folk or whatever else about National Health Services, I think just don't focus on one word. This is really petty, but keep it in the language of the people use, I guess, not the language you assume people would use.
But having a conversation implies a two-way process of communication, and I don't think that's come out yet.
No.
We've asked the question about how information is then fed back to the citizens who've played a part, and I don't think that's been made clear yet as how that might happen. But if it is truly a conversation, then we need to understand, we need to get feedback, we need to provide information, and we need to receive information in a way that's suitable to us, whether that's online, face-to-face or whatever. Perhaps a question needs to be asked about, well, how do we want to communicate with you, and how best can you communicate with us?
And if it's not conversation, if it's decision making, or if it's problem solving or whatever else, then those words should be used as well. And that would be a far better process if that's what it was.
Great.
Sorry, I was just distracted by the guy with the pool cue.
Thank you very much.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you.